I'm Steve Brule with Studio Brule, and I'm here with the Liberty Bells for our weekly show on what's going on in Britain and the world. Our topic today is a scandal at Google Inc. The top-level executive was recently fired for speaking out on anti-diversity issues, and we have a special guest who has some or I guess in-depth information about diversity issues within the tech industry. Welcome, Jason. And welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And would you like to start off, Catherine, and explain this issue that probably a lot of our viewers know about it, but can you give a brief overview of this issue?
Yeah, so a couple of days ago now, a Google employee whose name is James Damore, posted a memo on an internal Google messaging board, which kind of discussed his sort of reservations about Google's diversity policy and culture, and sort of saying that he felt it was creating an atmosphere that made it difficult for people to express views that disagreed. And he then did go on to comments about the fact that, you know, women are more likely to be interested in certain things and have certain skills. Men are more likely to have certain things, certain, you know, skills. And he did include citations and references to scientific research to back that up. When his memo was leaked, he had some charts and his references, they were removed when the memo was leaked. So I think it was Gizmodo that leaked it, and they defined it as an anti-diversity rant. And that phrase, that it was anti-diversity, that stuck. So a lot of the mainstream coverage described it as an anti-diversity rant, when in fact he had been very clear that he fully supported diversity, equal opportunities. He actually made suggestions for fairer, better ways to help, you know, to give opportunities to women and minorities, but ways that didn't discriminate against other people, ways that weren't so ideologically biased, but that just wasn't part of the coverage. He lost his job over this. And he is now kind of potentially raising money for a legal fight against Google, and many voices, many scientists have actually come out in support of him. Many women in tech have come out in support of him. You wouldn't know that if you only looked in the mainstream coverage. So I think, yeah, that is probably the story in a nutshell.
How long was his memo circulating within Google before it was leaked, approximately, do you know?
I'm not sure. I don't think it had been circulating for a very long time. I'm not quite sure about the dates, but I don't think it had been around for a very long time.
So it wasn't like Google wasn't particularly concerned about this memo until Gizmodo called it a diversity rant, and then they had to respond and hang a guy, yeah, sacrifice him to the altar of diversity.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he did receive a lot of messages of support from people agreeing with him. And again, there's countless tweets from women in tech saying that they agree with him. And the response has been incredibly unscientific. They have been essentially saying that he was saying that the women working in Google were not as good at their jobs as the men working for Google, which is to deliberately misunderstand the point he was making, which was about aggregate populations and aggregate, you know, demographics in aggregate being more or less likely to have certain skills, not individuals in their jobs. It's been incredibly
he was
dishonest.
Being logical.
Well, of
logical
course.
And scientific, as you might expect someone at Google to be.
And there was an article on the website Quillette where 4 scientists actually said, well, look, there's a plethora of scientific evidence, all of which supports his arguments. Most of the assertions that he made are empirically true. Makes no difference. So I actually tweeted the other day, if he does take Google to court over this, it would basically it could potentially turn into a version of the Scopes trial, where, you know, it was effectively a trial to decide if it was correct to teach evolution. It could, if this ever gets to court, it could potentially turn into, you know, his defense and I guess it would be whoever's the prosecutor of Google would be saying, here's the evidence, here's the evidence, here's the evidence, here's the evidence. How are you going to get away from this? So that would be interesting if that ever happened. I'm sure Google would not allow that to happen. But it'll be an interesting one to watch. I know Jordan Peterson is actually speaking to James Damore, so that will be interesting as well.
Oh my God, is he?
I think
interview's already been posted with Jordan Peterson and James Damore.
I haven't had a chance. I haven't had a chance to watch.
Do you have a link for that, Jason?
Yeah, sure. I'll just go look it up. Just
if you find it, just stick it in the chat window for the YouTube live stream.
Sure, just a sec.
While you're looking for that, we'll just get a little opinion from Nati on that. Nati, you had other things to say? Weigh in.
So I think it's glorious that this has happened. I think with everything that's going on at the moment with YouTube and Facebook becoming more censorious and stopping dissent and opinions from being expressed, it seems that way anyway. This story is obviously going to be spoken about by everyone, and it has. It's now permeated the mainstream media, and I just think that it's pushing the Overton window in a direction that we'd really like it to. If, like Catherine says, it does go down the legal route, where I guess there'd be a few things, whether or not Google broke their kind of contract on gross misconduct or kind of, you know, culture and diversity rules that they may have. That's one issue. And I guess the second issue would be as to whether what he's saying is true. And if they go down that route, or that is the sort of the main point of the legal case, brought up in the legal case, it would be glorious for all of us involved in this game, where we're talking about the biggest feminist myth, which is the gender pay gap and discrimination against women and girls in the STEM fields. So
I just want to throw out there.
It's happened. I'm sorry he got fired, but like, you know, he's kind of like the canary that needed to be put in the coal mine. Like,
we need great. Some of these test cases for sure. A fellow on here, one of our viewers, Hockey Bear, said that this document was available within Google for over a month, and it didn't. Nobody within Google batted an eye apparently until this Gizmodo article labeled this, according to feminist modus operandi, labeled it as a rant against anti-women and all the rest of that, taking a grotesquely false view of the whole incident. Welcome, Elizabeth has now joined us. Elizabeth, you know the topic we're dealing with today, right? The Google thing. I think it's very hot on your mind.
Absolutely.
We just had a short, we barely got started on it. Jason's here, he's looking up some background information, and he'll be back with us shortly. And
I posted it in the group chat for people in this. If someone could repost it in the YouTube one, would be great.
Oh yes, this is the interview with Jordan Peterson and the fellow at Google. I forget his name already.
James Damore.
James Damore. Thank you. I'll post that into the window. And Elizabeth, do you want to weigh in on your opinion of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible, the amount of misinformation. It's kind of hilarious. You know, the way it's being talked about as an anti-diversity memo when it's a pro-diversity memo, and he talks about how we might go about getting more women into tech and making them comfortable and happy in those jobs. I mean, I'm really happy about it all, because it's just suddenly exploded into our kind of cultural ambience and made it a conversation, which is a really important thing. So I'm very thankful to James for that. And that's my first word I'd like to say on it.
And let's take a moment for Jason. Jason, do you want to weigh in on your opinion? And then as we talk, you can give us a a little insight onto these diversity issues in the tech industry and what people can do who want to have their private protests, say by boycotting Google products, other things like that. I think somebody mentioned you had some info on that. Jason, can you weigh in on this topic?
Yeah, sure. First of all, as soon as I heard about someone had written this this memo, I was so sure that he was going to get fired. Like me personally at work, I try pretty much to talk to no one if it's not work related. I'm sure.
We mentioned to the audience that Jason is an insider, works in tech industry. I don't know if we mentioned that before. So he has intimate information with these kinds of incidents. Sorry to interrupt you, Jason. Carry on.
No, it's fine. But I really, I think there are a lot more people who think like this and just won't say it out loud. Other of my friends who work in tech, they have similar attitudes. Like they say they won't keep anyone at work as a friend on Facebook, and if they are, they're unrestricted, and they'd only keep in contact with them on something like LinkedIn, where you don't tend to post very much, and you don't be very opinionated. It's more like you're reposting a news source without showing you what you truly think. For people who have these sort of concerns, this may sound defeatist, but my honest advice would just to be stay quiet and get on with your work. It's just the safest thing to do. It's not worth risking your income over, or your potentially even later on in your career if it's something like James Damore, where his name's going to be in the media. It's not really worth risking your career over it.
And I might just say that that's the same issue that anybody who wants to speak out on issues related to men in any field, in any tech field, and just working with Janice and other people here who have other jobs while they talk about these things, a lot of people contact us but don't want their name on anything. They want to be totally anonymous for exactly those same reasons. It's very risky to a career,
yeah,
no matter what that
agree.
career is.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, that's all I really have to say on the topic. And James Damore, he has already been offered 2 other jobs. One was by Julian Assange to WikiLeaks, and one was by Gab AI, which is it's a very similar product to Twitter, networking site. Many of you probably have an account there.
I do, yeah.
What is the site?
Me too.
Again?
Gab.ai, so gab.ai.
Okay, let me put that out too.
I don't know if they still require an invite to join Gab, because I joined it quite early, and some people saying they tried to join, but they're on a waiting list.
Yeah, it took me about a month to get on, but I joined last year when they first came out, and it still took about a month or maybe a little bit longer for me to join. So yeah, I think that's probably still the case.
Right.
I know that my buddy Luke from Make Britain Great Again interviewed the CEO of Gab. You can find that on his channel.
Yes, Andrew.
It's quite enlightening. Yeah.
I'm just
sorry, I
looking,
thought you were going to say something else. Yeah, and they are, because they are GoFundMe funded. Basically, they are crowdfunded. I don't know if they have any huge investors. They might do, but it doesn't sound like that.
I visited their site recently, and there was a page about minimum investments. So maybe their funding model has changed.
Probably.
But in modern day, starting up a tech firm or something like Gab AI, it wouldn't require a huge amount of capital to begin it. So if there was need for other competitors, I do think the barrier to entry is quite low.
So, Jason, I wanted to jump in here quickly because my someone I know very intimately, I'm not going to speak about who they are and go into any details either, but they also work in the tech industry, but they don't work as a programmer. They work in communications and marketing. But they've been around the industry for a very long time, since the beginning, I'd say, you know, the dawn of the internet, you know, the late 90s. And this guy basically has to deal with people coming to job interviews these days, whether they are a programmer or a customer service person or a project manager, whatever, and they ask all sorts of weird SAW-like questions, such as how racist is their algorithm, how many black people do they have working there.
Hold on a second. I just got
that kind of
I can't
thing.
let this pass. Did you just say how racist is their algorithm? Algorithms
Yeah.
are racist now? Are you serious?
So apparently this candidate, when they were interviewed for a job, asked them if they have like reviewed or analyzed how racist their algorithm is when they're, I don't want to go into detail, but like matching customers with a service. So I can't really articulate this very well, but it's like, you know, like if you're on Airbnb, and Airbnb now have a very strong discriminatory policy, and they probably are now going through all of the different advertisements and listings to see if people are discriminating against those of color or those who they deem a worthy group, who, you know, who are a victim group like LGBT or black people or Asian people or something.
I saw a headline about this on the Daily Wire. I didn't read into the article, but they were saying that Airbnb was saying they were banning far-right people from being hosts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
How do they know?
I'm an
their
Airbnb
political
host.
leanings? Like,
But
how does
can I
Airbnb
just jump
know?
in? Can I just jump in on that? Actually, what has happened with the coverage of this Google memo is everyone taking Damore's side, and anyone taking Damore's side has been characterized as alt-right. So Owen Jones, for example, has an article saying, you know, he's now, Damore's become a poster boy or something for the alt-right. Another article, I link it in the article I wrote about it, was saying, yes, the support, what is it, the petition, the fundraiser for his legal fees has been put together by the alt-right. And as you were saying, like, who gets to define who is alt-right? So basically anyone to the left of this social justice intersectional ideology automatically falls into this alt-right category, and it's just so terrifying.
Well,
yes.
I mean, the actual document itself is very, very centrist, isn't it? It criticizes both right and left kind of positions.
He broke them down as the strengths and weaknesses of left and right. As what he perceived to be the strengths and weaknesses.
Do we have a copy of this original document of his? Is there a link to it?
Yeah, in my article. Do you have the link to my article on Backbencher? It's in there. I can grab the link.
Is the article in the email link?
It should be.
Yes.
Yeah, Elizabeth emailed it to you. I'll just grab it.
Well, I want to make a sort of disclaimer, because I was having a bit of a back and forth with one of my buddies on Facebook earlier today. She was saying that how libertarians are complaining that he got fired. And I kindly pointed out that I don't know any libertarian, and I talked to a lot of libertarians online who would complain about the fact that he got fired, because it's Google's right to fire who the hell they want. I don't care that he got fired necessarily. I mean, I obviously care about the reason why he got fired, but the fact that they fired him is their choice, and I stand by that. That's a principle that I have. They're a private company. They want to fire him, they can. But that doesn't
about whether they violated employment law.
Yeah, well, yes, but at the same, what I'm saying is that they still can fire him if they want to. So I personally have no problem with them taking their action, but I am scrutinizing the reasons why, and I will critique the reasons why and complain about it and make a fuss. And also now I want to stop using Google products, because it's getting to be on the point where they kind of have, they're like an octopus. They have their tentacles in every single bit of the internet and everything I use, and some of their products are great. I feel like I'm supporting the evil empire. And
before we get too deep into alternates for Google products, I just want to call viewers' attention to the fact we've got Belinda with us here today. And Belinda has been a Liberty Bell in the past and is quite busy right now, but I'm really glad you could join us today, Belinda. Have you been following this issue, and maybe you take a moment to weigh in on the issue of the Google firing?
Well, I mean, I've been reading all about it. I just took a lot of interest in it because in academia, I just engaged with these issues that, you know, obviously what he was saying was true about male and female differences. I think it's really, I mean, what I'm kind of optimistically hoping will happen is that people will read some of the references which are coming out in response to this. I was reading your article earlier, Catherine, and the Quillette one. And, you know, and I think it would be great if it could just be more commonly recognized that there are very genuine differences between this and that these affect things. I mean, it would be great if it did start to change the discourse little by little, but maybe I'm just an eternal optimist.
Well, it sounds like this issue or this particular incident has some serious legs. Jordan Peterson's weighing in on it. Pundits around the internet are weighing in on it. There's a lot of discussion. So who knows where it's going to go from here?
Yeah, and I'm you know, I think it's really interesting that he's brought up the evolutionary perspective. I mean, this is a really, you know, this difference between sort of social constructionist ideology, which just leaves a tiny minority of people in charge of how we should all be, and the sort of scientific realities of evolution. You know, that this has come up in his paper, which is all completely backed up by research. So, you know, I just think, and I mean, I guess like I'm imagining that he's a young guy. It's kind of pre-family. It's not like, I mean, okay, he's losing his job. And I think the biggest blow for him is that he actually really likes Google. You know, it's obviously a big blow to lose your job, but I kind of feel like, well, it's much better for someone who's not kind of supporting a family and all the rest of it. You know, he is actually in a position where
you're chopping in and out here.
Sorry. No, I mean, I just think that he's in a position where he could take risk. I don't think he actually thought that he was taking the risk. I don't think he really thought about it. But anyway, you know, let's just, you know, I think
you're kind of breaking up. I don't think
I don't know why.
when you were saying, Belinda, I'm sorry,
Okay.
your audio is breaking up.
Okay, I'm not sure.
But we captured a lot of it. We captured a lot of it. Just the last 30 seconds or so is
Nothing
we're breaking up.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask Jason to jump in again? Because I would like you to share with us a little bit more about the internal culture that exists within these tech companies at the moment. Because I know a bit about how they are at the moment, and you are in the trenches. So I'd really like to hear.
I could give some examples. Just from what I've heard from these big tech companies. One story is, I'll try not to name names unless absolutely necessary. In one tech firm, inside the offices, on one of the floors, a lot of people had different flags on top of their desk. Not like the little flags you put in a cup, like the full-size ones you would need to hang on the ceiling. So they had the LGBT flag, the EU flag, and then for employees who were like foreign, they had flags for them, like an India flag and some other flags from across the world. And so I asked my contact who works there, how come there are no Great Britain flags, or there are no American flags, because it's an American company? And he said to me, people probably don't want to put it up because they might be labeled a nationalist. I don't regard nationalist a dirty label as of such, but I do know people who regard it a bad thing.
That was just within Google, right? Of course, it's okay to be nationalist if it's not nationalist USA or Great Britain.
Well, there are a lot of people who think like that, so I'm guessing that's why. And
Yeah.
I've also heard stories about when my contact was going to training classes. When you're not in a class and you're sort of speaking to the people giving the presentation and stuff, he said that there were people in the same class as him who were suggesting that we need to improve diversity in our, in their company. Even though this training class had people from offices all over the world, had traveled to the HQ for this training, they still had an issue with not being diverse enough. Another
How diverse is diverse enough?
well, there's no limit to what they demand. In non-tech companies which have tech divisions like asset management and banking, especially at graduate level, their diversity hiring is pretty extreme. It's compared to somewhere like the big tech firms aren't so bad. The big tech firms, you might get fast-tracked to an interview if you fit a minority group. So even if your CV isn't A grade, you may still get to an interview stage, but then you're treated as an equal, from what I've heard. But with financial firms, for one, is if you fit any of the minority category, your interview the process is you send your CV in an email to a hiring manager. You come for one interview, and the decision is made. Now, for me, when I applied to the same firm and I couldn't get into this diversity scheme, I had to fill out a form online where I gave my CV, I filled in a questionnaire. Then I was sent a maths and English test. Some people might know if I said an SHL test, or if they know what that is, that's what I had to do. And then when I was asked to come to interview, I had to go for 2 stages. So I had to meet a lot more people, and I had to also do a coding test while I was at the interview. So there's a considerably less risk of not passing the interview if you can get in through a minority scheme.
That's everywhere in our culture, I think, right now. That's at universities, it's hiring practices within government, and you're referring to Google specifically, right?
No, not
That's not
specifically
Google?
That's quite a few tech companies. When I was talking about the different hiring practices, that was in actually some financial companies who hire people in technology. Not always programmers, but they're still classed as in the tech division. But as I say, for the actual tech firms, you may be able to get to the interview stage easier if you can if you're in a minority group. But then you'd have the same interview process.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yay. Yeah. At least there's still some meritocracy going on.
Can I ask you?
Yes.
Can I ask how many years, if you don't mind me asking, how many years you've been actually in the workplace, and if it has been a few years, if you've noticed things getting worse, or if you've noticed a change over that period of time? Just because I did used to work for a tech company in a non-technical role, and I think I left just before things started getting really crazy, which is very lucky, but I'd just be interested to hear your perspective on that.
Well, I've been doing I've been doing a role for around 4 years, but I first discovered all of this stuff when I was still at uni applying for graduate roles. So I guess where I first noticed it would have been around between 2011 and 2013. It's where I first started applying for internships and full-time positions. At that stage, it was already quite extreme back then. So I'm assuming when you worked there was quite a bit before 2011.
No, actually, I worked for a tech company between sort of 2012 and 2013. But luckily, I realize now they were a startup company, so there was nobody. They weren't very big. They were a startup, so there wasn't anyone really breathing down their neck about diversity. And one of the reasons I came to this whole thing, particularly why I came to Gamergate, was because as a woman who had worked in a tech company, they were just absolutely falling over themselves to hire women, but they did treat them exactly the same. The interview process was exactly the same. And then just after, I'm talking about this now just because the company is now defunct. I wouldn't talk about this otherwise, but I can't really hurt anyone. Just after I left, there was a female developer hired who had all of this kind of social justice stuff in her head, and apparently she really did start stirring things up, and it got quite nasty. But until then, it had been a brilliant place to work. So yeah, I think I escaped the worst of it just because it was a small company. But anyway, sorry, back to you.
One viewer just commented here that the Gizmodo article, when they published or referenced the Google document, they removed all the references. And then within the article, they complained that there were no references.
Oh yeah.
Is that true? Can anybody confirm that? Google's inappropriate and unethical reporting there?
They may have taken the because the memo first leaked onto Motherboard, who removed all of the references as far as I remember. So if Gizmodo had taken it the memo straight from there, maybe they're not fully guilty, but they're Gizmodo and they have a bad rep.
They admit though in the article as it stands, where Gizmodo leaked it, there's a little paragraph that says two charts and several references have been removed. So they must have known. They must have known what they were removing if they knew that there were two charts and several references. I think they
the Gizmodo article still complained that there weren't references in the Google document.
I mean, did it specifically? I can have a look. I'll have a look now.
One of the viewers suggested that was the case, so I thought I would just clear that up. Does anybody else have some concerns about Sorry, go ahead, Natoya.
Jason, do you work with any female developers, and what do they think about this whole situation?
I've worked with female developers in all the programming roles I had, and I've never run into one who's they all seem to be very nice people and hard focused on doing work. So yeah, I haven't actually spoke to any female developers I work with about this. At my current work, as I say, I don't really speak to people other than about work. But just by looking on Twitter, there is a mix of them. And obviously, the loudest ones are the ones complaining, because the people who are offended are always the loudest. But there are some female developers with over 1,000 retweets who are saying that they agree with things that are in the memo.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, a technically minded person is not going to bat an eye at a well-referenced and argued technical argument. Essentially, it sounds like that Google document was a technical argument.
The thing with that Google document
people are really accustomed to.
It even gave ways to say how to make development more supportive for women. Like they gave suggestions such as doing pair programming, which I do in my role sometimes, where you sit with someone to try and solve a problem together. He said that might help women feel more supported because in general, not always, in general, they tend to be more people, so they can work better with others.
Yeah, very true, which is why they all work in HR.
Well, also, programming is not a people person job. I mean, programming is a solitary, lonely endeavor that happens with you and your computer and in your head. Mostly, right, Jason?
Yeah, mostly. I'd say if I don't have a meeting during the day where we're just discussing what to do, most of the day I'm just sitting on my own, not talking to anyone. Maybe the odd question here or there to the person sitting next to me, but usually it's you're on your own sort of thing.
And that's essentially a requirement of programmers is to be a solitary problem solver. I don't know how you could program in a group. I don't know how that's, other than having the group to decide how to parcel up the program segments or the subroutines, maybe. But generally, once you've decided what needs to be done, it is by nature solitary work.
I agree with you. In general, in over 90% of programming, it should be done alone. And if you're not doing it alone, it's probably inefficient because you haven't broken the workload into things people can work on their own. People only tend to do pair program if they're trying to decide on a design decision, not necessarily how the user will see it, but just how the software is designed, or they're trying to fix a problem with it, and it's hard to identify where the problem's coming from. Apart from that, it's much more efficient on your own.
Could that be a natural difference between men and women? Most women prefer to work with other people, and a lot of men like working alone.
Well, if anyone's seen there's a video called the Norwegian Gender Paradox, which goes into this, and in general, that's true. And I always have to say this, not always, but in general, that's the trend. Yeah,
you always have to qualify, or you're going to be accused of hating women. Do you have a link to that? Do you have a link, Jason, to that Norwegian study you said? Was it Norwegian?
I think it's called the Norwegian Gender Paradox. It's the one, it's quite popular, where they show like children who are very young, before they've been socialized, like the boys would tend to look at trucks and the girls would tend to look at faces. If any of you know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've heard about that study before. And
that's replicated in primate research as well.
Yeah, I wanted to say to you that in America, there's quite a lot of Asians who work as programmers, and in fact, more females than relatively compared to American females. I mean, I don't know if this is exactly true, but this is the perception that I've had.
In one of my previous jobs, in the people who joined with me, all of the female developers were all they all came with a visa from China. I've been to California. There is a lot of Asians there, so that could very well be true.
And again,
yeah, what I was saying was that in places like India and China, the reason why there are much more women going into those STEM fields is because that's where the jobs are, and that is where a lot of the kind of funding is going to as well.
I read somewhere.
I've spoken to a few Asian women I know who are over in this country, working as like a project manager or engineer, and they've all expressed to me, just as anecdotally, that if the work wasn't there, they would choose something else. Because it doesn't come natural to them, even though they've managed to get skills in it, that they don't enjoy that work.
Okay, that's very pragmatic choice, and I think that there's maybe a cultural difference there. Belinda, I don't want you to go away if you're listening, because I see you look like you're interested to say something rather urgently. Could you weigh in? What is it you had on your mind?
That there is evidence to show that in the more egalitarian progressive societies, you actually have greater differences in job choices, and basically in poorer developing countries there's less gender difference, because in poorer countries people are choosing jobs because, exactly as Natty said, because they need a job. When you get to wealthier countries with all these equal opportunity practices, what you actually find is that people are in a position to choose. They start choosing because on the basis of what interests them, and gender differences actually increase. The gender differences in job choice get greater in more gender equal countries. Actually, it was something.
You mean greater within wealthier countries where you have that luxury?
In wealthier countries, which also are the ones who have more sort of gender equal policies, etc. But actually what happens is that the gender differences in job choice become greater because men and women choose what actually interests them, and women tend to choose differently from men when they have the choice, which is what we have.
Which is when we have a prosperous country, you have the option. These other countries you're talking about, they're choosing these jobs because that's where the money is. That's where they can have a good lifestyle. And
there is evidence, and there are academic papers about that.
Maybe we could get a link on that if you have one.
Yeah, it's
Steve, I've just put one into the chat box, actually, the gender equality paradox.
Thank you very much. Belinda, did you have something else to say on this? Because I think Catherine also has something to say. It was my sense watching you earlier.
I'm going to try and put a few links in. I'm really sorry, but I've actually got to go. I've got to go and attend something. I do have to go, but I'm just going to try and put some. I'm not quite sure how to put links in, but I've got a few links to these papers, so I'll just try and get them up. Okay, I guess I put it into this message box here. So bye, and yeah. So sorry to have to go, but it's just I do. Okay.
No, thank you for joining us. It's always great to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you for.
Let's switch over. Thank you. Let's switch over to Catherine. Catherine, did you have something you wanted to weigh in on?
I was just going to make the same point. You know, in countries like Zimbabwe, for example, I was reading one article, the ratio of females to males in computer science degrees is actually like 50-50 pretty much. So yeah, that's just one thing. But also just back to when I did used to work in a tech company, I was working in an office where, I don't know how many, but upwards of around 20 possibly video game developers. And I just feel so sad. Like some of these people, not all of them, but some of these people weren't the most social, didn't have the most social aptitude, and some of these people, went into this world of ones and zeros because, that's kind of where they felt comfortable, and it was such a wonderful nerdy place to work, and I loved working there because you could go to work wearing your I Love Frodo t-shirt and it was fine. It was great, and we played Settlers of Catan and it was amazing. But one of the reasons I felt so passionately about Gamergate was because these feminists do this every time men kind of have a space. I'm not saying it's an exclusively male space because it's not, but every time men are kind of doing something that's kind of on their own kind of thing, if you're just sitting at your computer with your ones and your zeros, suddenly someone has to come up to you and say to you, you're doing something wrong, you're oppressing someone, a woman should have your job. And I mean, there were so many ethnic minorities in working in the office. I don't think anyone could accuse them of not being ethnically diverse, but I mean, they're slightly unrelated, but it just reminded me, there was an article in the paper about how bird watching is sexist. And it's like, men are walking into the woods alone, doing nothing, just in the quiet, and you have to come for them. Can you not just leave men alone?
Can I just add in, you're talking about men only thing that the feminists seem to want to get involved in. There's something I've seen quite a bit on this Facebook page called Women's Rights News. I just thought it was a very ridiculous thing to keep whining about. Is Scouts, like Boy Scouts. I've seen them complaining quite a lot that it's discriminatory towards girls. I don't know what it's like in America, but in the UK there is a female equivalent of that. And besides, it seems like quite a minor issue, and why they're making such a fuss about it. It's not like there aren't similar activities girls can do as well, or they could start their own.
I don't understand why Boy Scouts is sexist. There's loads of I mean, I guess they call them Girl Scouts in the US, but here it's Girl Guides, and you want to have a mixed gender one, that's fine. But I just think that's just, these people just don't know what to get upset about next. Anyway.
Speaking of Girl Guides has been infected. We should do
Girl Guiding is terrible.
They've been infected by feminism. I mean, like, it's you have to have a look at their website, because
they're called Girl Guiding, and they've got this Twitter account. They are absolutely infested with it. It's unbelievable.
When I was a Girl Guide, and I remember it being run by these very matriarchal, tough Christian, like, kind of women that were like out helping tend to men in the war types, like, tough women. That there were these two old women that used to run my Girl Guides. I cannot imagine for a second that they would like appreciate the SJW culture that is now infested in Girl Guiding. Just a side point there. We should talk about it one day, because it's really, really, really bad. Anyway,
I like the topic too, because I remember when the Boy Scouts admitted women, girls, and so it's really not the Boy Scouts anymore. And this started quite a long time ago. The first time I saw this was in Canada, I think, in the early or mid 1990s. And this is progressing through every institution and every segment of society. Is that anything male must allow women, but nothing female must allow males. And I just want to end on one other point here before I pass the baton. It's 10-4, and I think we want to, at some point before we sign off, get to alternative Google products, alternative to Google. We had one of them earlier on, which was Gab.ai. I think there's others like Minds.com, which is maybe an alternative to Facebook. But if anybody else wants to weigh in on other topics, do it now, and then we'll I think Jason has a little bit of expertise on these alternative Google products.
Yeah, I wanted to maybe segue into what Jason will have to say. Basically, as I mentioned earlier, someone I know very well works in the tech industry and has been in the startup tech industry from the beginning. They believe that Silicon Valley, and obviously not all the businesses are based in Silicon Valley, but that whole culture and that whole industry is going to die a death very soon. And I think This is one of the reasons why this is happening. It's one of the reasons why the CEO at Uber got ousted recently. One of the companies that I know quite well is being sold, which I'm not going to mention, but I'll tell everyone else about it later. But you know, they're one of the kind of poster companies in this field, and they're being sold because they've got no money. I think Google and Facebook are only where they are really because, well, obviously they're really good products, but also because now they have had to kind of cozy up to some politicians and governments. Otherwise the governments will come for them in some kind of way, because that is what's happening with everyone else.
I read
the general points I'm making. Yeah.
The government issue is the laws are in a way forcing companies to take these hard lines in some ways. Maybe we should do a session on that.
Definitely they are. Yeah. Especially with Facebook and the EU and Facebook. They are putting a huge amount of pressure, and I'm sure it's the same with Google. I can't remember the exact initiative right now, but I'm sure Jason might know what I'm talking about, and some of the girls might know. But if they don't take a line on it, then they're being forced to. And you know, in the UK, our government is forcing all of the companies to publish their what they're paying male and females to end the gender wage gap. And so I think we're going to see a similar kind of reveal about things very soon when that happens here. I think there'll be another kind of media storm related to that too. But yeah, anyway, I just think this is a symptom of a larger thing about Silicon Valley and the tech industry. I think that it's on its way down rather than up.
I don't think Silicon Valley is going to go down for quite some time, just simply because it's just such a huge industry and it's going to be hard for people to move away from it. Even then, the thing with this sort of spirals into what we were saying about how to get away from Google products. There are a lot of startups and small companies which most people wouldn't be aware, but their entire infrastructure is backed by either Google or Amazon. Most of them use Amazon, something called AWS, Amazon Web Services. But just for example, if anyone uses Snapchat, that uses Google in the background. They so all their backend stuff is run by Google, not coded by Google, but just use their infrastructure. And because this is like the cheapest way to just get computing hardware to run your stuff, people are going to keep buying from Google and Amazon. So I don't see them shrinking too much anytime soon. And even the competitor platforms to things like Facebook and Twitter, Gab.ai and Minds.com, just because they're so well established, I really don't see them getting mainstream adoption. Maybe for people like us who are, I don't know how many of you have been banned from Facebook or Twitter, but I know a lot of people who have been banned from Facebook, including Facebook Messenger, for a long time for things like posting a meme. So when I hear stuff like that, it makes me feel like maybe I shouldn't post on Facebook because I need Facebook Messenger to talk to my friends, my family. So,
and also,
okay, and just right there, just right what you just said, Jason, is the essence of oppression. You thought to not post it because it could be negative repercussions to you. That is how, and that in a lot of people aren't conscious of that. They just unconsciously say, oh, you know, maybe no. That's essentially the core of how all people become repressed by these kinds of things.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I just point out, obviously, Google owns YouTube, and YouTube's going to be doing this whole thing now where videos that do not breach their guidelines, but that are deemed to contain, well, they're saying terrorist stuff, but also extremist or supremacist content are going to be, you know, basically kept hidden so no one can see them. And that's part of the same thing. And what you were saying, these companies are too big to go anywhere. If they're after our community and they chase us off YouTube, YouTube is going to carry on without us.
Yeah, I agree completely. And it's just going to be hard to get, even so for all this stuff I learned about social justice and stuff, most of it just came through, I was watching YouTube and there was a suggestion to watch this video. So even if we do start migrating to Minds.com, that will just be a small fraction of people. It'll be hard to convince everyone start your platform on VidMe or something where less people are going to see it because they feel like they'll get less publicity, and then it'll just make it harder for everyone to shift off it.
And I think the role of the mainstream media is really important here, because the mainstream media will not present an accurate view of this. They refuse to look at Gamergate properly. They're refusing to look at the Google memo properly. Any opposition is alt-right. Any Gamergater was a misogynist troll.
I saw somewhere posting Gab AI is a alt-right Twitter. I can't remember who posted that, but I've seen that article going around.
So because the mainstream media's role in this is to make sure that, you know, not your average Joe who doesn't look into these issues, because why should they? Because they have a life. Your average Joe is going to think that we are extremists and that we are supremacists, and we're not, but they need people not to know that, because the whole point is to stop people from listening to people like us.
I want to share a strategy to folks, and maybe viewers out there can think about this and respond and give us better ideas. One thing you might think about is using, say, YouTube as an example. This is just an example. Use YouTube to give a flavor of what you're going to talk about in other materials, and then post the bulk of it in some other venue, some non-Google based venue. So you can use YouTube as a way to communicate broadly to your audience without being too controversial, and then direct them offsite to Minds.com or Vimeo or some other platform that maybe isn't quite yet so censorious.
I had an idea which could help to accelerate something like this. So my idea was, if essentially there was a plugin for your browser, like I know most use Google Chrome. I'll talk about other browsers later, but if there was a plugin where when you open a YouTube video, you could get like a pop-up or something where the creator of that video has linked to their VidMe account or Minds account and the video linked to this account. And you could get a message on the pop-up saying, this content creator would prefer if you watch this video on this different website. Do you think many people would be interested in doing something like that?
I think people might be interested if there was additional content when they went there. You know, if they're going to view the same content and not have to click. I mean, it's weird to say, but I think a click is like a barrier. So I think if the information included enough to get you interested, and then you click for more, you might get a lot more action towards the new venue.
Well, on things like Minds, what happens is you get these points or something that you can use to boost your post popularity. And there are other
you have to get the people to Minds in the first place, right?
Yeah, but that's
so
why
you might click your clickbait on Facebook and then say, hey, the rest of this is on Minds.com, you know?
Yeah, something like that, which similar to YouTube, where it's like if you start watching videos on some alternative video site, you get points for watching, and then you can spend those points on, I don't know, disabling ads or whatever for a little while. People may be incentivized to do it. There's also a project called the Basic Attention Token, where essentially if you allow ads to be shown in your browser, you'll be rewarded with well, this channel accepts Bitcoin, so I'm assuming you know what cryptocurrency is. So you'll get given cryptocurrency to look at ads. So if you get some sort of incentive system to not use the mainstream outlets, maybe people would be interested in doing that.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Concerned with the increasing and the speed at which it's accelerating, the censorious nature of these like essential services. They're basically essential services now. Google is such the biggest web crawling web service in the world, and all of their products are essential. So when they start to cut people out,
I was talking to my partner about how it is partly our fault for letting this happen as consumers, because it's paid for by advertising, and we've kind of got addicted to this great service that Google provides, and we're not thinking about the cost. We're not thinking about what, you know, nothing in life comes for free, and
yeah,
this is what we're paying the price.
What's the cost of free?
Exactly.
And I have a question for Jason. If we wanted to take ourselves particularly off Gmail, would there be a way? What's a company that you would advise, or the best place to look for somewhere if you want to pay for your email service provider? Do you have any recommendations for that? And also for kind of like somehow sucking all of your past emails off of Gmail, because I wouldn't have a clue how to do that.
Right. The thing with email is I've been using Gmail since back when it was in beta, which was like, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. But I have looked into other ones. I have other friends who try to avoid using Google products, not for the same reason as us. It's just because they don't like how much Google know about them, because they have your emails, they have your location history, your address, everything.
The cost there.
By the way, to the cost thing, before I forget, there's a speaker who talks about blockchain technology called Andreas Antonopoulos. He refers to the cost of using these services as micro violations of your privacy. Because every time you do something, they're getting a tiny bit more data on you to build a profile on you that they can use to sell you stuff. So that's essentially the price.
Is there any real way to stop this, though? I mean, that seems to be a part of the cost of modern life.
Well, that's how these companies make money. So if you want to stop that, you're going to have to stop using their products. And as we said, it's very hard to stop using their products.
Here's the dilemma. There's maybe less than 1% of the people in the world who even care. 99% plus of the people that you know are going to use the Google product. If you want to communicate with those people, you're going to have to communicate with them through Google products. So if you decide to go totally off Google, in a sense, you're going totally off the public conversations that are going on in the world.
Yeah, I
including
agree.
Your friends and family.
Yeah, I have a friend who doesn't use any Google stuff, and I can only contact him via a text message or a phone call. I have no other way of talking to him, and he's like the only person I send a text message to, because everyone uses WhatsApp or Facebook now. So yeah, I agree with you what you're saying. It's hard to get off Google considering and Facebook and all the big things, because there's so much dependence on them. WhatsApp, by the way, if people don't know, is owned by Facebook. So that again is owned by one of the big tech companies. So what Catherine was saying was about email. My friend who avoids using Google because of how much I know about him uses the Microsoft one, which is Live. It used to be called Hotmail. He said he quite likes it. I use it with I use all my emails with the app that comes with Windows, the Inbox app. There's also other things like, there's other ways you can consolidate all your email accounts into a single app. But there's one email provider that that's used in the open source community for people who wish to stay anonymous use. It's called GMX, gmx.com. It's owned by a web. Yeah, so that's owned by a web hosting company called 1&1. I think they used to do TV adverts. GMX is known, for example, the well-known developer by some Satoshi Nakamoto, the guy who created Bitcoin. Almost certainly not
Bitcoin. That's what I thought. Yeah. Is that a real guy? I thought that was an artificial name.
Well, people assume it's a fake name, but people have been looking up real people called Satoshi Nakamoto, and they don't think it's the guy who created it. But anyway, yeah. So he uses a GMX account. I'm guessing because it seems like a pretty privacy-focused product, one that would be not reliant on Google. And from what I can see is that they do provide you unlimited storage, a mobile service, and some helping out software. I haven't got an account there. It's just one I saw when I was looking around.
Well, I'm going to get an account just to test it out. I wanted to throw this out there too to viewers and to the panel. What do you think about anti-monopoly laws as they might apply to places like Google? It's pretty close to a monopoly that Google and Facebook have on their business space. Is there some way that a group or some concerted effort might apply anti-monopoly laws to these companies?
I've heard some ridiculous stories about anti-monopoly laws and antitrust laws. So I was reading a book by Yaron Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute called Equals Unfair, and there was one scenario where these antitrust laws were used because if anyone remembers Netscape, that really old browser, they used to have to pay for on a CD. Netscape. Yeah, so they filed an antitrust lawsuit against Microsoft because they were giving away Internet Explorer for free, and they're saying this is unfair competition. So if you can file a lawsuit that easily, well, I'm pretty sure someone could kick up a case with Google. But you hear the stories about you shouldn't try to take on big
I
corporations.
just want to back up on that though, because I think AT&T, wasn't it AT&T not long ago, was hit and had to be broken up or something, or was that some other communications company? It's 25 years ago or something like that.
I'm not too
using
sure
those
about this.
antitrust laws, those anti-monopoly laws.
But then again,
You
the
know
thing is,
anything
Google.
about that?
I think I heard something along the lines of there was only one ISP provider and they were abusing their, like giving the customers bad service, high prices on purpose. I don't know if it was this AT&T you're mentioning, but I've heard a story about
It's
that.
a
I don't know
U.S.
too much about
company.
it.
AT&T, I think, was the one, and I think that viewers, don't quote me on this. My memory is really bad when it comes to this, but it may have some reason why Verizon and there's a number of others that are competitors to AT&T right now in the U.S. for cell services. But I could be wrong on that.
The thing
is,
is, I don't think Google. The thing with the anti-monopoly laws is I'm pretty sure they won't work because it isn't a true monopoly, because there is competitors like Facebook and Microsoft who do very similar stuff, and also it's very easy for a competitor, a startup, to begin and compete against them. So there'll be a lot of evidence saying they're not truly a monopoly.
I think the best scenario possibly would be a bunch of ex-Google employees getting together to make a competitor. Do you think that's going to happen?
A bunch of ex-Google employees.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to be everywhere anyway. But I just mean, like, you know, who's going to be able to compete against Google? Well,
we should think about what product is it that Google provides that we really want a competition to. That makes it because you're saying that like these Google products make it too hard to interact with anyone else. What is it you think is the hardest to compete with? YouTube?
not YouTube.
YouTube's huge.
I'm talking more about, for example, Google has Google Earth and it has Maps and it has all the kind of location services and the Google AdWords, and that stuff is, I think, the stuff that people can't get away from as easily as, say, YouTube or something else that they own.
Don't Apple and Microsoft also provide like location and I don't know about the globe services, but I think
you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah, that's right. Apple Maps. Apple Maps.
I want to just throw out here that on this topic of anti-competition or whatever, the anti-monopoly laws, apparently the EU fined Google. This is coming from a viewer, John the Bemused. The EU fined Google $2.7 billion in antitrust in June, just 2 months ago.
No, I don't know too much about that.
I can't confirm it. I just reading
the
the
reason why
comments
it
here.
wasn't publicized.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm sorry to butt in. I really need to go. Natty, would you be able to check your Facebook chat, because Elizabeth has asked you to just say a couple of words.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Guys, I'm so sorry. I really need to go. And thank you, Jason, for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Take care.
Okay,
All
thanks,
right.
Catherine. We'll see you again next week, I hope.
Thanks.
Oh, so Elizabeth had to go, but she says, can I mention the DDoS attack on Quillette, which happened earlier today? So I don't know if you guys know, did you know about this, Jason, that there was an attack on Quillette?
I heard it was just a Quillette. Their provider couldn't handle the amount of traffic they were getting. I didn't know it was a DDoS
right,
attack.
okay.
Is there evidence? Did someone claim an attack?
Well, I'm going to have a look at the thing now, because I thought when I saw it that it was them going down because of the amount of traffic they were getting. That's what logic would tell me. But it says in a tweet. So Quillette magazine have said in a tweet, we have been informed that our website is down due to a DDoS attack. So apparently they have been attacked by an outside source or whoever. So yeah, that's an interesting development.
Well, I think it's a very, petty site. It's not like a serious issue they're going after. If people are seriously willing to, I don't know the laws about DDoS. It is a malicious thing to do. So
Yeah.
it's probably illegal. I don't know why people would go use this much effort for someone just posting scientific papers about gender differences. It seems pretty pathetic to me.
And also, Elizabeth wanted to give do a final thought before she left, but she, so she's asked me to say it for her. She says, do we want a society based on the Enlightenment values that have brought us so far? So this includes free speech, individualism, rigorous empirical discourse, or do we want a society where these sorts of things are dreams of yesterday? What is most likely to lead to progress? I guess that's a question to you, Steve, and to you, Jason, and to anyone on the chat. What is most likely to lead to progress? Free speech, individualism, and the Enlightenment values, or repression, oppression, censorship?
I think we know the answer to that.
Yeah, it might be a rhetorical question. There's a bit of self-selection going on here, because I know Jason's pretty on board with those values too.
Well, obviously, rigorous intellectual discourse is critical to a modern society. I mean, society will collapse without it, and it's not going to go away. I think we're in a peculiar, weird time right now where we're having a resurgence of this collectivist thinking that come through the back door using basically our cultural predisposition to protect, raise them up, gynocentrism. That's how feminism cut in the back door, and with it came collectivism and an attack on rigorous thought, an attack on things male, and a lot of that. Short term, I'm pessimistic. Long term, I'm optimistic. That would be my view on it. That we'll see that really you can't continue forever by in a bed of lies. Ultimately, everybody's going to say the emperor has no clothes, and the emperor gets replaced.
Yes, well, I guess the bets are on as to when that particular moment, when that pivotal moment, or at least month or day or year. I agree with, Paul Joseph Watson, the kind of InfoWars guy.
Imagine my shock, man.
Yeah, imagine my shock. Yeah. He says that conservatism is the new counterculture, and if they keep pushing like government policy and people like Google and Facebook keep shoving it in our face and censoring everyone, then they're going to make a counterculture. It's going to become a real counterculture. It's going to go underground. And what could be more sexy for young people that have been told all their life growing up in the state school system that they can't, say anything on PC, or that everyone has to express their feelings all the time, as long as it's in a certain way. If they're a white male, basically they're the devil. So what could be more sexy than this? They're just creating a monster. It might be a monster. It might not be, but it could become a very creative, beautiful force. But
okay, let me just weigh in on
a monster.
I want to weigh in on this one because I have a son who's 18 years old, and him and his friends, they talk about these. Okay, this is exactly the demographic you're talking about. Yeah. Rebelling is sexy. Okay, everybody young wants to be part of the rebels. Rebel against the older generations, whatever you want to call it. But get them into university, they want their degree, and they all talk about themselves about how increasingly, as they go from 15 years old in high school, they get out of high school, they realize the world isn't going to revolve around them. In high school, they're kings. All of them are kings. That everything caters to them, to that, because they're not adults. They're starting to feel the pressure of adulthood as they leave high school. They're starting to realize, okay, I'm in here university to get a degree. When I get out of this degree, I need a job. If I keep saying this kind of stuff, I can't get a job. I'm F. Okay, so I would say, I continue to say that I'm short-term pessimistic. Personally, see serious weakening of feminism, or sufficiently enough that it loses its grip on our culture in my lifetime. I don't know how much longer I'm going to live.
Old.
Maybe that's not very long.
You're pretty old.
I'm pessimistic from the sense as I don't think I'm going to see it. I think my son will see it, that change. Jason, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, sure. So I'd like to say Steve's closing point about people must be scared about what they're going to say. They're going to lose their job or their career. I agree 100%. I will just say even if you see some injustice in the world, a lot of people won't agree with when I say this. I would say if it's going to cost you, if it's going to cause harm to you or your family, it's probably not worth doing it. Unless you have sufficient security behind you to risk doing it, I really wouldn't recommend it. In terms of the original question about individualism and free speech, and relating to this whole diversity culture, I would like to say if we took a Martin Luther King quote and we took it to a diversity rally, and we replaced the name Martin Luther King with Donald J. Trump, let's say there was a protest for against affirmative action, and there was a sign that said, you know, the one that goes, I hope that a person is judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin.
Yeah.
With Donald Trump written on it at a anti-affirmative action rally, that person would be hounded, and the media would absolutely rip them to shreds. Even though that
they would be a social pariah afterwards, for sure.
Yeah,
and they may never live to see it change.
Yeah, even though that most people who would attack that guy would be hugely respectful of Martin Luther King, just because now that same quote can't be used to fit their agenda, they choose to write it off. So
I want to throw.
I do wish people. Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to throw one other anecdote out here. Is that I have a lot of friends my age who have their own businesses. You know, some of them have gone through the divorce court nightmare. In one case, in a lot of cases, losing a lot of money, a lot of status, losing their kids, losing their homes, rebuild, have a business. And I talked whether they want to participate in this or that project, video or whatever, on men like them. Without exception, these guys say no. Emphatically, no, not even anonymously will any of them participate for one reason. It could destroy my business that I've rebuilt. It could, and I just can't do it. They sympathize. They believe that the work that I'm doing, that you guys are doing, that all people in this is very important. But they will not risk. Again, they have been and rebuilt. They will not speak out again. Maybe when they're 80, maybe not.
But,
I don't know. I can't convince them to even do it anonymously.
They don't need to speak out necessarily. And sometimes I fall into the trap of getting a little bit despairing about people not speaking out publicly, and I'm trying to build a kind of support group for women who are against feminism and this kind of thing. I also get down about that all the time. But if there are people out there, and there are people out there who are willing to fight the fight, now I think one of the best, a tech person, a programmer, if they want to keep on coming up with ways to support those people and ways to support and fund them anonymously, I think that would be the way to go. So, like with people like Patreon and PayPal, but kind of anonymously funding people or supporting them, I think that would be a way to go to get more people involved, to support those who are able to fight the fight publicly. Sure. Like I've made myself public.
My point was mostly that from my point of view, I'm looking for stories that reach other people. So I need people to tell their stories, or there's no story.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't criticize these guys for that. These are my friends, right? And or friends of friends that I talk to about these things. I'm not criticizing them. I perfectly 100% understand it. So yeah, and I agree. Funding things is a role that some other folks could prefer and do as well. We are on to an hour and a half almost. We should probably wrap it up. If any final points from either of you, three of the others have departed already. If either of you have had any final points, we should probably get them out there. For this week.
My final point is, if there's anyone who is like 16, 17, 18, university is not all it's cracked up to be. And if you can find an alternative way of getting into a career, a job that you want, then do it, because it's just not worth it, in my opinion. You know, unless you want to be like something that has to be done at university, don't bother. Yeah, that's my final thought.
Okay.
Can I respond to my final thought?
Definitely.
Sure. So I do agree a lot with what you said about uni's not what it's cracked up to be. I went to uni, I studied computer science, and honestly, you don't learn very much at all, and you rack up a lot of debt. You'll learn a lot more if you do something like do a Udemy course, or even if you don't want to spend, well, I buy mine for like £10 a course, but even on YouTube, you can learn a lot. And the skills if you want to work in tech, the best skills I have is teach yourself and gain experience, make things. The problem does arise when you're applying for a job. This is the most useful thing about a degree, I will say. When you apply for a job, and on the automated form, it asks, do you have a degree? You click yes or no. You fill in which uni you went to.
Yes, just
that is the most useful thing about going to uni. If you want to learn, uni is fun, by the way. If you just want to do no work for 3 years and have fun, sure, you'll rack up a lot of debt, but probably worth it for that.
That's a very expensive party.
It's a very expensive party, but I thought it was worth it. But
can I just say, I used to work in the job center, and I had young people coming, and I used to say to them, just exaggerate on your CV if you think you can get away with it. They don't check 99.9% of the time, but that's just me.
I know a lot of people who got jobs for doing just that. They exaggerated what's on their CV. They got to the interview, and so some people I know just lied their way through it. In technology, you can't really do that because you have to go through a coding test. But
yeah, I'm not saying don't apply for a job if you don't have the skills. That's different. I just mean like the gravitas of saying you have a 2-1 or a first from wherever fucking university. Like, I just think the sooner that breaks down and doesn't become as important anymore, the better. And
well, with the way universities are treating people, it's going to break down rather quickly, especially outside of the sciences. But the point that Jason makes, I want to also emphasize that very same thing, and most people probably know this already. All education is self-education. It all is. Even when you're at university, the professors really don't teach you very much. They guide you. If you're not really a person who educates yourself, you probably won't do any better at university than not at university, other than, like Jason points out, you'll get a credential, which is important enough. All education really ultimately is educating yourself.
Many people I know who weren't interested in computers, who passed my same degree as me with a first or 2-1. A lot of them either moved into roles completely unrelated to what they studied, or they're stuck in a role where they're finding it very hard to move because they're not taking the initiative to gain new skills to move somewhere else. So yeah, self-education is by far the best education.
It is what happens. You do educate yourself even when you're at university. And so folks, I think probably we should sign off today. And it's been a really lively, I want to thank Jason and Natoya and Belinda and everybody else, Elizabeth, Catherine, for joining us, and viewers for joining us as well. Join us again next week. Same time, same bat channel, as they say.
All right. Thanks a lot, Steve. Take care.
Thanks, Steve.
Good night.